There's a high AT cut, Ken. I'm going to go ahead and change blades to a triple chip, and we'll make a cut and solid surface, and you can tell our viewers about that.
Oh, this is so good. Is it time? Are we back?
I think we're back, yeah.
Yes, you're back.
We're back. We've been back.
Okay. This lovely cut right here. This was made by a high ATB bit, or blade, I'm sorry, high ATB blade, high alternating top bevel blade. As you can see, it makes a V cut in the wood itself, and that shows you the cut of the two teeth. John's getting ready right now to make a cut using...
That's that blade right there.
Do you want to set that up, make a cut right beside it? We can show the two different cuts, how they appear different from the... make another cut right beside this one?
Well, I could. This is a modified triple chip, which would normally be used for solid surface, but
it'll
I can
show
go
the
ahead and
difference
make
in the
cut
cuts.
there.
Here you can see how the teeth make a V design, and John's just getting ready to pop that right in. So once again, you can see there's absolutely no chip in the melamine anywhere, top or bottom. So this blade is very desirable for that application, whereas a flat top blade would actually just have blown out the bottom of this material.
Now also, Ken, for that particular material, in the melamines or in a high pressure laminate, we sell a scoring blade attachment by Modulus Machinery, which actually won the Challengers Award in 1986. And it's the only really true way to cut melamine and laminates chip-free in solid surface on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
One thing you have to understand is that anybody's blade that says, they have a laminate blade, high AT, they're going to dull very, very quickly. And most of them say that they have to sharpen the blade in order to guarantee that it's going to cut again. And many of those blades cost as much as $165, $175, which is absolute crazy as far as I'm concerned, because they're going to dull very quickly, just like any other blade. The Modulus scoring saw attachment will cut an entire pallet of strips up and not be dull, because the scoring blade is coming into the work from the bottom, and the main blade is coming down through the work. So one thing you have to keep in mind is that they only cut well when they're sharp.
Mm-hmm. As does any bladed tool.
Let me go ahead and make a cut right next
beside
to that.
this one. That's a nice saw, John.
Actually, the saw that we wanted to show everybody tonight was the saw we sell from Lobo, but it got damaged in shipment, and we weren't able to show it. But this is a nice general saw. We don't sell
No pun
these
intended,
saws.
of course.
Right. That's correct. But you know what I want to say, though? I don't know if you want to get into this.
How bad that table was.
This table was so rusted. This is my shop table, and I'm embarrassed to say that, this looked as bad as it did. But what we did was we soaked it with strike hold, which we showed last week. This is a rust inhibitor, and it actually goes down into the metal. It lifted the rust out of it, and all we did was sanded this with a Rotex and sandpaper, and then we hit it with Scotch-Brite, and that's as good a finish as you would have on any new saw, as far as I'm concerned. So that's kind of cool, and that should protect this now as well.
So John's going to go ahead and make the second cut right now, and we'll very quickly show you. Now you can see right here, this is a modified triple chip grind, and you can see that the pattern is actually reversed.
Yep, it is.
It's cutting. The lead is out of the center. Here, the lead is on your outside edges.
Now, modified triple chip means that on a triple chip blade, we don't have anything to show. We should, but you have a
Conical.
Yeah, it's flat top with the edges cut off, and then what's the next blade?
The next blade would be
a flat top.
No, the first one. The first one, it goes one conical with the top knocked off. Next, you're going to have one bevel to one side, with its leading edge knocked off.
Here you are. Now this has a so it's
now
a flat.
Slightly different
it's a
heights.
conical and it's a flat, and then on a modified, the flat is actually cut off on the corners.
Correct. So, and this is really intended for solid surface materials. It'll also cut laminates or any plastic.
Right.
And I mean, that's the standard in the solid surface industry.
Right. Now, one thing I also wanted to mention is that I noticed in going through the different manufacturer specifications and everything that every one of them that has a solid surface blade has a 0-degree hook, which means, let's see, which one do we want to look at? If you look at this blade here, if we took a line and ran it through, that tooth is in line with the one in the bottom, okay, which is a 0-degree hook. It's just straight flat. Now, the blade that we sell, manufactured by Limbide, which we've been selling since 1986 for solid surface, is a 10-degree positive hook, which means it's leaning forward, all right? And I'm not sure why everybody says the negative is or the 0 is the way to go, because our blades cut perfectly, and we've never had a problem with them. So I was a little bit surprised to see that.
Well, I think the desire by most manufacturers is to push the debris out as opposed to pulling it into the gullet.
Right, and this actually here is a 10-degree positive modified triple chip, and it cuts solid surface without any problem at all. Let's just go this way here. Actually, I'll go right through and show you the cut that we get. That's a nice smooth cut.
And that's on the Limbide?
And that's on the Limbide blade out of New Zealand. And that's a positive hook, 10-degree positive.
So that gives you a little bit of information on saw blades. Here, I'll let you put that over there, because we're really going to be running out of time here fast.
Right. Let me just quickly say, for saw blade maintenance, what we'd like to see you guys do is just spray it with a little strike hold.
Okay, I thought you were going to get a little crazy with that stuff sometimes.
I wouldn't do that to you. It actually cleans off the packing gel that's on there, but strike hold we're finding all kinds of things that this stuff is great for. But what it does is, since it soaks into the steel and forms a protective barrier in there, it should be great for saw blades. As far as a lot of my saw blades in my shop, we're in high humidity here, they hang on the shelf and they get a surface of rust on them, which really doesn't kill them, but they just look like crap.
Well, that and it'll also help things like pitch and other things from building up on it.
Absolutely.
Because once again, by having that layer there, they will tend not to stick as much.
Okay, what's next?
Okay, now into something I really kind of got excited about, are router bits. I mean, saw blades are cool, router bits are where it's at. We only have 10 minutes. Well, we'll move quickly. We'll probably be spreading this over a couple segments.
We can do that.
But router bits, very quickly, we'll talk about what is the most common bit out there. Manufacturer didn't seal these up so well. These all happen to be bits from Velopec, which I was talking with them today, and I was telling the engineer I was talking with that, one of the things I appreciate most about Velopec is when I got into solid surface a long time ago, this was really the first company that was sensitive to the needs of the solid surface industry. Well,
do you know that Fred Velopec actually worked with DuPont to make cutting tools for DuPont Corian product when it came out?
Correct.
So they were actually
way ahead of the curve.
Way ahead of the curve, absolutely.
So as far as solid surface goes, which is the industry that I really come from with a lot of strength, I have a lot of affection for Velopec because they cared about us. So
affection?
Well, kind of, you know what I mean. Getting a little weird around here. But this right here, that is a single flute bit. The benefit to a single flute, and this is a plunge bit. As you can see, there's no bearing on the bottom. So this
is covered with cosmoline. That's why it looks that way.
Oh, is it? I thought they always cut like that. No. But anyway, this bit will plunge right through your material. Very common bit in solid surface industry, as other industries as well. And that will cut fast. The second most common blade is a two-flute. As you can see this way, I'll show it to our cameraman. But a two-flute, what it does is it enjoys two cutting edges, as opposed to a single flute, which only has a single cutting edge.
Right.
So this will cut slower, much like saw blades. The more teeth it has, the slower,
slower
cuts.
cuts, right.
But the cleaner the cut.
Well, actually, on a saw blade, the more teeth, the faster you can run it through on automated equipment, believe it or not.
Really?
Yes.
But unfortunately, most people aren't automated.
That's right, exactly.
So,
but the gullet is much different on this one. So this allows for a quicker chip removal, but the single flute on here doesn't give you as smooth a cut as a double flute does.
correct. And now, something that's very important for all you guys to consider is now I have in my hand here a double flute bit.
Right.
This is a larger diameter. This is 5/8 and these are 1/2 inch. But the important thing that you really need to pay attention to is you want to pay attention to the cut length that your bit delivers. These both deliver, it looks like a 2-inch cut, and this delivers a
probably a 1-inch cut. And
1 inch, 1 1/4, somewhere in
Right.
that area. But you wouldn't want to use this bit to cut just 1/2-inch material, because by using it to cut just 1/2-inch material, you're putting a phenomenal amount of stress on the blade, because
Right.
you're either extending it too far below the material, or you're cutting down here, and there's just phenomenal amount of pressure applied to the collet. Here, the blade, in proportion to the amount of material it's cutting, is going to give you much better performance, and it's going to increase the longevity of the cutter and the tool both,
Right.
and also take a lot of strain off of you. So those are probably the most common bits you see in the industry. However, there is a line of bits that have been making a stronger appearance in the industry as we've gone on over the past few years. And what are those bits, John?
The spiral bits. Spiral bits, we've talked about these on several occasions, but spiral bits, they're far more expensive. Well, they used to be far more expensive. A solid carbide spiral bit, which is what this is a more expensive bit. And the reason it works so well is that as it's cutting the material, it's slicing through it like a barber pole. If you watch a barber pole, it's going around always in a downward or an upward spiral. And a 2-flute bit is going to give you a slapping action on the work. So this is going to give you a smoother cut. It's going to last longer. It takes less horsepower to run this bit to make the same cut as it does with a single or double straight flute bit. What am I missing?
It's also, because of the spiral shape, cutting less material.
Yes, less material at one time.
Correct, because this is always cutting the full thickness of your material,
of the material
at any time.
And
this
that's
isn't,
just taking the cut down.
because it's shaving through it. Its contact area might be as small as 1/8 of an inch
Right.
at any one given time. So because it's cutting so much less material, it's giving you a much cleaner, a much lower effort cut
Right.
than something like this. And now you've got something really unusual there.
This is something new on the market, and this is actually a carbide tip spiral. This is manufactured by Lindbide, and I don't know if anybody else has anything like this on the market, but it was certainly new to us. And this is a compression spiral. It cuts up from the bottom and down from the top. And since it's not solid carbide, the cost is not near what a solid carbide spiral bit is. These are available with a bearing or without a bearing, which makes it nice because they're a nice pattern bit to cut flush in the bottom and run your bearing along either a template or finished workpiece.
Now, a couple things I've discovered about these bits to really pay attention to what's important about them, I think, is that you really want the center point of where the top and the bottom cut come together.
Right.
You really want that in the middle of your work, because that provides balance in the bit.
That's correct, right.
If you go too much one way or the other, you tend to actually force the bit to cut unevenly.
That's on a compression spiral.
Correct, on a
Right.
compression spiral, this particular bit that we're talking about. Another really nice benefit to these Lindbide bits, and we have these in different lengths, one of the great benefits is, I know I bought these in the past when I was in fabrication and still buying from you. I know I had bought some of these bits, and if these fall and hit the floor, they tend to shatter.
Right.
And there is not too many feelings as sickening as watching $100
Yep.
break into pieces on the floor. The great thing about this, it's more like the traditional bit. In this case, the bearing would even probably provide some protection for the carbide.
Right.
But this right here, one, it has much lower cost, so it's not nearly as
Exactly.
sickening to see it happen. But because it's not carbide, if it hits, we're not worried about it. It doesn't have that fragile feature to it that you would have in the solid carbide. I know I'd be afraid to take this bit, and tap it like that because I know the carbide can break so easily.
Right.
So that's a couple very quick differences right there. We have just a couple more minutes for break. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other things we do when we come back. But before we run into that, just to point out a couple other bits, this is a quarter-inch flush trim. Quarter-inch shank.
Flush trim, quarter-inch shank.
Correct. Quarter-inch shank. And this is a half-inch. Why would that be critical?
Well, depending on the amount of material you're taking off or type of material you're cutting, you wouldn't want a quarter-inch because the load is going to cause that bit to go out on the bottom. Mm-hmm. Where this would be for solid surface, you'd always use a half-inch shank.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Is that right?
No, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. The quarter-inch shank is for very light-duty work.
Right.
Maybe some very small profile.
Small laminate trimmer, maybe.
Exactly, because it's not going to hold up the bit well in a stress cut.
This is a common laminate trim bit, flush to trim off flush to a front edge.
Whereas a bit like this with a half-inch shank is going to be able to handle the energy stress created by the strength of the cut. So that is a very important feature, paying attention to the size of the shank and what you're cutting. Also,
before you get into that one, another quarter-inch shank. What's different about that one? It looks completely different than these do.
It is. And I'm not a laminate guy, but I bet you John can tell you, because I know all about bearings. I know about quarter-inch shank, but that's a weird bit. That's a laminate
Well,
bit.
this is a solid carbide router bit designed for doing laminate work, which is exactly what you were talking about. This one has a point right on the top of it, so you can actually plunge down through a workpiece. Like, let's say you had a sink cut out. You can plunge down into the work and then route around the inside to cut the hole out. So you have a flush cutter right here. This is your bearing surface, and that's a point. And I guess we're going to talk about everything else after our break.
Lot to do.
We'll be right back.